of 160 miles an hour. There's no speed limit today for the Daytona 500.
His name was Paul Goldsmith, and on February 15, 1963, he climbed into a car that had no business being on that starting grid at all. Around him sat some of the most expensive, most celebrated sports cars on the planet. Ferrari 250 GTOs, Corvettes, running a secret prototype engine so new it didn't even have a real name yet. Jaguars, Porsches, cars built by companies with entire racing divisions, entire histories built around exactly this kind of competition. Goldsmith was sitting in a Pontiac Tempest, a compact car. The kind of thing your neighbor drove to the grocery store, except this one had been built in secret over a Christmas holiday by engineers racing against a deadline that was about to end their entire program forever. 250 miles later, Goldsmith had lapped a Ferrari 8 times. He beat the second-place finisher, a man named A.J. Foyt, by 5 miles. This is the story of the 12 days Pontiac had left to build a legend, and the 12 cars they managed to finish before the door slammed shut behind them. But to understand why this car existed at all, you need to understand the engineers who spent 3 years quietly building toward this exact moment, and the phone call that almost stopped them before they started. The engineers who built a war machine in secret. Pontiac's road to Daytona started years earlier, and it started with a rule everyone was supposedly following. In 1957, every major American manufacturer signed on to an industry agreement, the AMA Gentleman's Agreement, promising to step back from factory-backed racing. Pontiac, quietly, never fully honored it. By 1960, over-the-counter Super Duty performance parts, built on their 389 cubic inch V8, were winning 7 NASCAR races and an NHRA national championship. In 1961, an updated package pushed that further: 30 wins across 52 NASCAR events. Pontiac wasn't just competing anymore. It was dominating, while officially pretending not to be racing at all. The next logical step was displacement, and Pontiac's engineers built a 421 cubic inch Super Duty V8 to answer it. But the NHRA revised its rulebook for 1962, specifically to keep this new engine out of the stock classes it was starting to embarrass. Pontiac's answer was simple and aggressive. If the rulebook wouldn't let them race it as an aftermarket part, they'd install the 421 at the factory instead, in the full-size Catalina, and eventually the Grand Prix. By early 1963, Pontiac had built roughly 240 Super Duty engines total, a genuinely tiny number for a major manufacturer, and every one of them built by people who understood exactly what kind of statement they were making. Then, in late 1962, word started spreading through Pontiac's engineering department. General Motors was about to formally enforce the racing ban this time. For real, company-wide, no more quiet workarounds. Everything Pontiac had built toward for 3 straight years was about to be shut down. They had 1 window left before the door closed completely, and they used it. What they did with that window is one of the strangest engineering sprints in American automotive history. And it happened during the 1 week most engineers were supposed to be home with their families. "12 cars built at Christmas against the clock." Not willing to let the 421 Super Duty program simply disappear, Pontiac's engineers spent their Christmas holiday of 1962 putting together roughly a dozen Tempests before the ban could take effect. Not the full-size Catalina this time, the compact Tempest, Pontiac's smallest platform, chosen specifically because it already had one genuinely unusual advantage: nobody else in Detroit was using. The production Tempest used a rear-mounted transaxle, which gave the car a nearly perfect 50-50 front-to-rear weight distribution. In 1963, on tires that offered a fraction of the grip modern rubber provides, that balance was worth more than almost any other single engineering advantage available. Pontiac's engineers looked at that quirk and decided to build their entire war machine around exploiting it. They packed a stronger power-shift 4-speed transaxle into new heavy-duty cases, replacing the torque converter with a robust mechanical clutch for sharper launch response. Aluminum body panels went on wherever weight could be shed without compromising structure. Factory-supplied headers and slicks, bucket seats, and, underneath all of it, the dual 4-barrel 421 Super Duty V8, the same engine that had already terrified NASCAR and NHRA competitors for 2 straight seasons. When production finally stopped, cut short by the racing ban closing in exactly as feared, Pontiac had completed exactly 12 cars. 6 Le Mans coupes, 6 station wagons, 12 total examples of what may be the most unusual factory race car Detroit ever quietly built during a holiday week, racing against a deadline nobody outside the engineering department even knew existed. But one of those 12 cars was about to get pulled aside for something even the engineers who built it hadn't fully planned for. The car that got sent to war. While all 12 Tempest Super Duty cars were genuine stripped-down monsters, one specific coupe was pulled aside and sent somewhere else entirely, to Ray Nichels Engineering in Merrillville, Illinois, where it was extensively reworked to survive something none of its siblings would ever face: a brutal 250-mile endurance race against the finest sports cars in the world. Hot Rod Magazine's own reporting on the build lays out exactly what Nichels' team did. The race-prepped car carried a dual-quad 421 Super Duty V8, producing somewhere around 500 horsepower. Oil coolers to survive sustained abuse a drag strip pass never demanded. Reinforced suspension, a full roll cage, because this car was now genuinely expected to survive real endurance racing, not just an eighth or a quarter mile. And then there's the detail that still amazes serious Pontiac historians today. Engineers paired 2-speed Powerglide transmissions back-to-back and adapted the combination to that rear-mounted transaxle. A genuinely bold, unconventional solution that gave the car both the balance the platform was known for and the durability a 250-mile race actually demanded. If stories like this, the ones where a small group of engineers quietly built something extraordinary against an impossible deadline, and almost nobody outside their own department knew it was happening, are exactly why you keep coming back to this channel, now's a great time to hit subscribe, because what happened when this specific car actually reached the starting grid is the part of the story most people have never heard at all. The race was called the American Challenge Cup, run at Daytona International Speedway as a support event leading into the Daytona 500. And the field, Pontiac, was about to line up against read like a wish list from every sports car magazine in America. Ferrari's 250 GTO, a secret Corvette running an engine so new it barely had a name. Jaguars, Porsches, and one white Pontiac compact that qualified fourth, directly behind 2 of them. The 250 miles that should have been a formality. Under rainy conditions that lasted the entire day, Paul Goldsmith qualified the Tempest Super Duty 4th overall, directly behind 2 Corvettes and a Ferrari 250 GTO. Already, before the green flag ever dropped, a compact Pontiac built during a Christmas holiday rush was sitting on the grid ahead of nearly the entire field of purpose-built sports cars that had traveled specifically for this event. Then the race actually started, and everything the qualifying order suggested turned out to be an understatement. Goldsmith didn't just compete. He annihilated the field, averaging over 155 miles per hour across 100 laps, while lapping nearly every other competitor multiple times over. He led from start to finish. By the time the checkered flag came out, he had lapped one of the Ferrari 250 GTOs, one of the most legendary sports cars ever built, 8 separate times. The second-place finisher that day was a young driver named A.J. Foyt, running one of the Corvettes with that secret prototype 427 mystery motor under the hood, an engineering prototype using some carryover parts from the 409, not even available to the general public yet. Goldsmith beat him by 5 full miles. Think about what that actually means. This wasn't a narrow, contested finish decided by a late pit strategy or a lucky caution flag. This was a compact American sedan, built in roughly 2 weeks, plied by engineers racing against a corporate shutdown deadline, systematically dismantling a field that included one of the most mythologized cars in automotive history, and doing it by margins that read more like a different category of racing entirely. The Tempest's specs, on paper, actually explain part of why this happened. European competitors, like the 250 GTO, relied on finesse and high-revving engines built for precision cornering. The Tempest answered with brute force and balance. A big, torquey American V8 paired with genuinely excellent weight distribution on a track built for exactly that kind of straight line and high-speed oval strength. It wasn't a fair fight in the way Ferrari's engineers would have designed one. It was a different philosophy entirely, executed almost perfectly on a day built to reward exactly that philosophy. And then, almost immediately, the whole program simply ceased to exist. Which is exactly why almost nobody alive today has ever heard this story. Why the victory disappeared overnight. Here's the part of this story that turns a genuine triumph into a genuine tragedy, at least from a historical memory standpoint. Almost immediately after that Daytona win, General Motors enforced the racing ban company-wide, for real this time. Pontiac's factory racing program was shut down completely. No follow-up program, no sequel car, no sustained marketing campaign built around the win, because officially, Pontiac wasn't supposed to have been racing factory cars at Daytona in the first place. That corporate silence is the single biggest reason this story never entered mainstream muscle car mythology the way the GTO or the Hemi Cuda did. Pontiac couldn't loudly celebrate a victory that technically violated an agreement they were supposedly honoring. There was no triumphant magazine cover campaign, no dealership promotional blitz, no ongoing race program building on the momentum. The win happened, and then, for corporate reasons that had nothing to do with the car's actual performance, the entire program simply vanished from view. Of the 12 original Tempest Super Duty cars, 6 coupes, 6 wagons, the years since have not been kind. 4 of the 6 coupes were destroyed outright. A 5th was eventually found stripped of nearly all its distinguishing factory equipment. Today, only one complete, correctly equipped Super Duty coupe is known to exist anywhere in the world. The wagon fared only slightly better. Only one is confirmed to still exist. The Union Park wagon raced originally out of Maryland, carrying its correct dual-quad 421 engine and power-shift transaxle intact. 12 cars built in a 2-week sprint, 1 legendary Daytona performance, and a corporate decision to bury the entire story rather than celebrate it. That's an unusual combination, even by the standards of the forgotten cars we cover regularly on this channel. But real car people eventually find real history, no matter how quietly a corporation tried to bury it. And once collectors figured out exactly what these surviving cars represented, the auction results became genuinely extraordinary. What survives and what it's worth. The surviving Win Engineering Tempest coupe, the only complete, correctly equipped 421 Super Duty coupe known to exist anywhere, has become one of the centerpieces of Dana Meekum's own personal collection of rare Pontiac factory racers. It sold at Meekum's 2010 Original Spring Classic auction for $455,000. $455,000 for a compact Pontiac Tempest. In 2010, a number that would have sounded genuinely absurd to anyone who saw one of these cars sitting quietly in a Pontiac dealership backlot in early 1963. That result reflects exactly what serious muscle car and racing historians already understood. This wasn't just a rare car. It was a documented, verified piece of a story that included beating Ferrari, beating a secret Corvette prototype, and beating it all decisively enough to lap the field's most celebrated entry 8 separate times. The Union Park wagon, the only surviving example of the 6 station wagons built, occupies a similarly rarefied position in the collector world, specifically because it retains its correct, matching dual-quad 421 Super Duty engine and powershift transaxle. In a hobby where numbers matching and correct factory equipment separate genuinely significant cars from expensive curiosities, having the actual, documented race-spec hardware still installed makes this wagon nearly impossible to replace if anything ever happened to it. For collectors specializing in Pontiac's factory racing history, specifically a genuinely small, deeply knowledgeable community, the Tempest Super Duty represents something close to the Holy Grail. It's not just rare in the way a low-production muscle car is rare. It's rare in the way a genuine, one-of-one piece of motorsport history is rare, carrying a documented connection to one of the most lopsided victories any American manufacturer ever pulled off against European sports car royalty on European sports car royalty's own turf. And that brings us back to where this story started. A driver, a car built during a 2-week holiday sprint, and a corporate decision to quietly let the whole thing disappear, rather than let the world find out what Pontiac had actually built. 12 cars, built during a Christmas holiday, racing against a deadline that would shut the whole program down before most Americans even knew it existed. A driver named Paul Goldsmith, lapping a Ferrari 250 GTO 8 times in front of a crowd that came expecting exotic European engineering to put on a show, and a corporation so uncomfortable with its own victory that it simply let the entire story fade into silence rather than celebrate what it had actually built. The 1963 Pontiac Tempest Super Duty proved for exactly one 250-mile race that a compact American sedan with the right engineering could humiliate the most celebrated sports cars on the planet. And then it disappeared so completely that most muscle car fans alive today have genuinely never heard the story. Now I want to hear from you. Did you know a Pontiac once beat Ferrari at its own game? And which other buried factory racing story do you think deserves its own deep dive on this channel? Drop it in the comments. We read every single one. If this brought back a memory, or if it's the first time you're hearing it, hit like. And subscribe for American automotive history most channels never bother to tell. See you next time.